Divorce your wife, adopt a pit bull, rent a billboard, write a novel. And then once you're done with that, buy a gun so that you can join the literary renaissance. And today, I am going to be dropping some knowledge on how Cormac McCarthy divorced his wife and lifted himself out of writer's block because of that decision. And I know some people out there are going to be triggered by this topic because, hey, I have a wife and I am never going to divorce her. But you and I are not generational talents. You and I do not describe ourselves as having the biggest ego in the world, which Cormac McCarthy once said about himself. When someone asked, Cormac, why do you write? He said, because I have a massive ego. I want to be the best. And so the decisions you and I have to make are much different than someone like Cormac. And I want to speak to the people right now because I read every single comment you guys leave. I don't have time to respond to 100 comments per day. That's a full-time job. But I read every single one and make multiple videos a week responding to comments. And this is one of them. And if you guys don't know, my name is Ian, and Right Conscious is the headquarters of everything related to Cormac McCarthy. In the playlist down below, you will find over 200 videos on McCarthy, which makes it the greatest deep dive into an author or into really any artistic figure ever done on YouTube. And so if you want to enter the iceberg, go look at the playlist down below. But let's hear from one of the fans of the channel, a Mr. Elijah Booswell, where he pushes back against this idea I'm talking about. Because, like, yes, we got some fan-freaking-tastic literature from him, and that's great. But to say that he would never have been able to write Blood Meridian or The Road if he hadn't divorced his wife is a scary statement. On one hand, I agree that maybe those specific books wouldn't have been written, but on the other, marriage is a completely different type of relationship than just going out and meeting people. It's something you have to fight for and be changed by. If Cormac McCarthy had stayed married, I'm not saying he'd be better or worse at writing as a result. We might have gotten a profoundly written novel that deals with the intricacies of marriage. And I think that maybe Elijah doesn't know the history of Cormac McCarthy very well. And so I'm going to have to drop some knowledge bombs because, first and foremost, Cormac McCarthy already wrote a marriage novel because early in December of 1962, Cormac McCarthy was in his first disastrous marriage. He had kind of fallen into the trap of marrying someone that is like your mother. He married another writer that he met in his university program, and he was the king of that program. His first two short stories won some awards. He was the man. And then they moved around and lived in Chicago with each other and other places, but it was a tumultuous relationship from the start. And eventually it climaxed when McCarthy was staying at home and writing all day, and his wife, Lee Holloman, was going to work for 40 plus hours a week, and they were living in abject poverty. And she was like, we need money. We have nothing. I have this newborn child. And Cormac said, well, you need to go get a second job. You're going to go need to work 70 or 80 hours a week, and I'll take care of the kid for you. And she just had this kid, not a year ago, like a month or two prior. And she said, no way, you're being abusive, and you're an asshole, and I'm leaving. And good for her. But during those initial arguments, McCarthy came up with an idea for a novel titled Outer Dark, which was inspired by his marriage. And all the trauma and everything surrounding his divorce fueled this novel. And if you don't know, McCarthy is a very inspired writer because there are logical people out there, and this isn't wrong, who can think of an idea or just find an idea and have no spiritual or psychic energy behind it and finish it. But almost every single Cormac McCarthy novel deals with trauma. McCarthy's first novel, The Orchard Keeper, was a rebuke against his alcoholic and abusive father. McCarthy's first two short stories, Awake for Susan and A Drowning Incident, are about his relationships with his father and mother. And McCarthy had all this pent-up energy about his dad being the one that threw so many people off their land in Tennessee. He had so much resentment that he was the son of someone who would do that. And the same guy who was abusing him also, that he decided to become an artist and write a novel of what guys like him do and how guys like him are destroying the culture and people like Arthur Ownby and Marion Silder and John Wesley Ratner. And so after McCarthy's first two novels, he's living this weird period of being a divorcee. And he's being an existentialist sad boy. He's reading Camus and he's doing journal entries like, I'm spending another Thanksgiving alone, another Christmas alone. Like, you can literally go read these, and I have read them in the Cormac McCarthy archive. We learned that Cormac McCarthy was a fake cowboy and never rode a horse, that we got that marketed into our heads by a marketing genius over at Alfred Knopf, and I'm going to make a video on that. And we also know, because of his journal entries, he wasn't some tough guy. And while finishing up his later drafts of Outer Dark, he met Annie Delisle. And she was a dancer on a ship. She was European. She was way different than anyone Cormac McCarthy had met before, and he fell madly in love with her. And eventually he brought her back and bought a property in Tennessee and built a house. You guys know all that lore. And they were living there together, but they were also living in abject poverty. They were bathing in the lake and having no toothpaste and doing these things. But Annie was raised in a more, not aristocratic, excuse me, but a little bit more uppity way. And so she really cared about being a socialite. They would always be going and doing social things, as you guys can see here. If you scour the internet, you can find 50 plus photos of Cormac in different types of suits going out to parties. And there are stories of people being at their house every night and Cormac playing the guitar. And this was a relationship where Cormac McCarthy was very domesticated. And you may ask, how do I know that? Well, Annie Delisle, to her own account, said that Cormac McCarthy divorced her because she put too much pressure on him to write books that were for money. Because when you're living out there and you have no money and your husband doesn't want to work and all he wants to do is write, you're like, okay, I understand you're an artist. You wrote The Orchard Keeper and Outer Dark, and those are wonderful novels. But can you write something to make us a little bit of money? And so Cormac McCarthy actually obliges because back in 1958, Cormac McCarthy started writing a novel called Suttree. And it was evading him. It was semi-autobiographical. It was about his friends and what he went through and kind of the area that he idolized and in his favorite time period. And he just couldn't get it off the ground. But he kept trying because in an interview about Outer Dark, they asked him, hey, what's your next novel going to be? And he says it's going to be a novel. He didn't say titled Suttree, but it's going to be a novel. And then he describes the novel, and that novel's Suttree. So he wasn't planning to write Child of God. But when he was financially strapped, he sent a letter to his editor, Albert Erskine, and said, hey, I need some money. I need an advance. Please help me out. And he was like, okay, we can work something out. But he's like, what's the novel going to be? And Cormac McCarthy had cut a section of Outer Dark in the editing process. And he said, I'm going to use part of this and combine it with the Lula Lake murders, which had just happened a year or two prior to him starting Child of God. And so if you think about that, this isn't a very inspired story. Cormac McCarthy needs money. He has about 10 or 15,000, he has about, 5 to 8,000 words from Outer Dark that he can use. Child of God is only 33,000 words, everyone. And then he says, okay, I'm going to create a crazy character and just imitate this other incident. And that's exactly what happens. Child of God is such a small novel. It's a good novel, but it was 100% a cash grab by McCarthy. It was nowhere near his best effort. It was a massive step down after Outer Dark and The Orchard Keeper. And many people like that novel because it says Child of God. And Child of God is his most read Southern novel by far because of the name and because of the length and because of the lack of difficulty and ambiguity in it. And so people will be like, I love Child of God, but they haven't read his other three Southern novels. And more importantly, most likely not understood them and seen kind of the genius in those. And so in 1973, when Child of God comes out, guess what happens? It doesn't sell any copies. And that's what happens when you push against your destiny. And so Cormac's sitting there. His wife is probably nagging him to her own account. And he has visions. He has this idea that he wants to finish this novel, Suttree, but it's still in a standstill. Like if you go look at the archives, he was making no progress on it. And so just like Suttree, he realized that to escape this writer's block he was in, because he hadn't written anything on Suttree, the novel he was trying to write, in years, and he was just doing cash grabs, to escape this purgatory, he was going to have to take radical action. So he takes Annie Delisle out on her birthday to a nice restaurant in Knoxville and says, I'm moving to Tucson. And the next day, he packs up and then drives out to Tucson in 1974. And so to quickly address the claim that was made in the comment, if Cormac McCarthy would have stayed in that marriage, in an environment that was focused on money and not on literary merit and not on his vision, sure, maybe he would have written a couple more novels, but we would have never heard of who he ever was. And most likely, he would have tried to finish Suttree. That still would have been the project, but it would have not gotten anywhere close to the level that he took it after he moved to Tucson. Because what my favorite period of Cormac McCarthy, and it's funny that we got all this new information, has always been this Tucson, this 1974 to 1983 period, when suddenly he explodes because he moves to Tucson and he finally has the time and freedom to just do what he wants to do, because he was strapped down every single night with social events and just being a husband and all these different things. And so he finally can kind of get into science. He can start to explore one of his biggest interests. He starts getting into the occult. Cormac McCarthy starts getting into Gnosticism and alchemy and Freemasonry and tarot and the Kabbalah and all these different things. Cormac McCarthy was never a Christian. If you go look at my unreleased interview I have over on my Substack, which includes the Cormac McCarthy course and the Cormac McCarthy book club, if you guys want to go join us, we are starting to read The Crossing next week alongside 9 other books by different authors. But he was taking psychedelics. This was this massive awakening where he could finally leave Christianity behind. And he never was a Christian. In the interview, he says, I never listened to those nuns. In the interview, he was asked if he was religious. He was like, no. And so he has more of an ephemeral conception of God. And that's why he was studying Buddhism and Taoism at this time also. But then we also know that at this time, as I reported long before that Vanity Fair article came out, they started getting with younger women. There were quotes out there. This is just so funny that people are mind blown. There have been quotes out there for years where McCarthy admits that I had young girlfriends. Scholars have alluded to this because people knew about this relationship. And so in 1974, Cormac McCarthy gets with either a 14 or a 16-year-old girl, depending on what you believe in the Guy Davenport letter, or he had a habit of getting with girls over and over again. And this kind of sets off McCarthy to really start fueling his ego. If you listen to what he's saying in those letters, like, I don't care about the FBI, and he's having sex with an underage girl who is an orphan, who is obviously way below him in terms of like intellectual and emotional, spiritual capacity. He just got out of 2 marriages. He has a kid. And remember, he doesn't tell her about the kid or about these marriages, which is funny because he probably had to fess up because also in 1974, so in 1974, he starts doing the whole Augusta Britt thing, but he also takes Annie Delisle to Mexico. He brings her back and says, hey, come on a vacation with me. And they go to Mexico for a couple months. And he's being a sad boy the entire time. He's writing letters back to Annie Delisle saying, you're the love of my life. I'll never love anyone as much as you, which I believe actually. But also during this time, his writing explodes. Guess what he writes, everyone, during this time? He writes No Country for Old Men, Cities of the Plain, which is the Border Trilogy, The Gardener's Son, Suttree, Blood Meridian, a screenplay for As I Lay Dying by Faulkner, The Passenger, a Stella Maris screenplay. This was a creative explosion. And so to say that Cormac McCarthy didn't escape writer's block because of his divorce is crazy, because actually every single thing he did from 1974 to 1981 when he got the MacArthur Fellowship and became a millionaire was what he wrote off of on his entire career outside of the road, which is a crazy thing. McCarthy was actually very lazy after 1981. McCarthy became a millionaire and made money and stopped writing. All the Pretty Horses and The Crossing are laying out and bringing elements from an already written screenplay. No Country for Old Men was a screenplay. Stella Maris and The Passenger. Stella Maris was a screenplay, and The Passenger had been started in 1963. And so outside of The Sunset Limited, The Counselor, and The Road, which are very short and somewhat easy novels to write, I would assume, compared to some of his more complex works, McCarthy cruised for about 40 years. And so this period was actually a huge creative explosion. And even though I do agree that you need to fight for your marriage and like all this stuff, I think that has been. Let me ask you guys a moral question right here. Should Cormac have stayed with Annie Delisle and made her happy, and maybe he stayed a little bit happy and more stable himself, and so he makes one person happy? Or should he have undergone something and made one person upset, maybe left the love of his life so that he could transform the lives of millions of people for centuries to come and have an artistic influence for maybe the rest of time? Back in Vegas, I have a friend who was like, he's like an old school blogger. I want to call him a friend, someone who I've met a couple times. And he ended up divorcing his wife. And there was a huge amount of backlash about it, like online. But he told me that he was stunted. He told me that, Ian, if you think what I've already done is big, I'm going to do way more once I get out of this relationship. I'm going to help so many more people. And yes, my wife and my kids maybe are going to have to suffer. But how about all the other people? How about my destiny? And, it's an interesting perspective to think about, because should someone stay with someone because they're unhappy and have to change who they are? And when you change who you are, you move further away from your destiny, from what you're supposed to be doing, or just go full into that and find someone who supports that. I found most of the time, if you are an activated and motivated individual and you need someone to support you and you have a ton of negativity and toxicity around you, this goes for men and for women. It doesn't really matter. The nagging wife is real. I have so many friends who get nagged to hell. The reason I could do these videos and keep up this output is because I have a supportive wife. But I've been in toxic relationships and got nothing done. I didn't write one word for 2 years, you guys, because I was just getting beaten down all the time emotionally. And I was programmed into all this, like, no, change, look at all the good sides. And to be an artist at some level is to put your art first. It is to realize And this isn't all the time. This is for certain individuals that marriage and long-term relationships just aren't compatible with you and your vision. Cormac McCarthy, after this, got divorced from his third wife. Also, David Lynch had 4 wives. Dennis Hopper had 5 wives. Like we could go on and on about people who've had multiple wives. And it's a high risk, high reward game, you guys. There have been plenty of people who have divorced their wives, left their kids, and said, I'm going to be an artist, and nothing ever happens. And they actually don't help more people. They actually have left a trail of destruction. And so I'm not here to necessarily advocate for that. But that's why I advocate for, and that's why I speak very plainly about your mission, about if you want to be a Cormac McCarthy, if you want to be a David Foster Wallace, if you want to be some of these guys behind me, first of all, you have to be genetically talented. Then you have to be raised in an environment for decades that supports that. Then you have to be extremely motivated to put 5 to 10,000 hours into every single book and do that for decades until you finally break through. Everyone thinks they want to do that, but no one is actually going to do that. That's that. And there's nothing that I can say to motivate you to do that. You're either bred for that or you're not. And many people are in a delusion thinking they are that. But there are other people, and I would consider myself in this group, who can be great writers, who can influence people, who can become full-time authors. And so I'm sorry to Annie Delisle. I'm sorry to all the people out there who have been heartbroken. And this is a problem, obviously, like the whole eat, pray, love. I've known many of my male friends who have lost their girlfriends to just getting, I'm going to go on a spiritual journey. I have to go find myself, which means that they're just going to go do drugs and get gangbanged and like all this other stuff. And then they just end up marrying someone richer 10 years down the line that's like a computer scientist, Poindexter. Like I've seen it all happen. Like I understand. I've seen men, I watched my sister go through this. I've seen men say, I have to go find myself. And then they just go get a new girlfriend, like, and use the rambling excuse. So do the shadow work, understand where you are and where you are going, and then your decisions will align with that, and you will see the opportunities that you need to take and what you need to do and who you need to surround yourself with. Boom, there it is. My name is Ian. We just did that, and I will see you guys in the next video.